All right, so before we start writing queries, again, some concepts. Okay, so the first thing is we have to create a database. Okay, a database is going to have, the next step is to create a table. Okay, so database table, and the third step is to create a columns. We're going to create columns in the database, and then the last step is to create rows. Okay, let me write that down. So the first step we will do is create a database. The next step is to create a table. Then you're going to create columns, and then rows. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through all the 4 steps. Once this is complete, this means you have a table, you have a database, and then we can go ahead and start querying our database. Okay, in SQL, you will hear the word database, or it's also called schema. They kind of both go hand in hand together. This is also called schema. Okay, so the first step is to create a database or a schema, and then once you have the database, then you can follow along and kind of create the next steps. So a table resides inside a database, columns are part of a table, and then rows are part of the table as well. Okay, everybody good, clear on that? Okay, so the first step is to create a database, and one more thing before I show you. Oops. Of course, I'll have to show you the documentation so that you guys cannot say, oh, I don't know how to do that. MySQL, let's see, what is it, 8.0? 8.0 documentation. Okay, so if you go to, we are using version 8. So if you Google, this is the documentation. Let me go ahead and slag this out so that Goose can't say that I didn't slag this out. All right, so this is the documentation, and it has all the documentation from how do you create a database and how do you write the queries and everything. Okay, we'll come back to it and kind of refer it. The first thing is, this is what you will come to this. Okay, now I tried my best. The only thing I can zoom in is this editor. This thing, I didn't find a possibility how to zoom this in or this thing. Okay, but the more important part is already zoomed in, so you guys should be able to see it. Okay, so the first thing is, and now this is SQL. It's a different programming language, so we have to follow the syntax. The syntax to create a database is create database, and then name of the database. Okay, so this is the this is the line that is going to go ahead and create a database. Okay, now the syntax. Again, so SQL is case insensitive. Basically, uppercase, lowercase don't matter, right? But as standards, what I like to do is any keywords that are part of the syntax. For example, the keywords are create database. This is custom. Okay, anything that is part of the SQL syntax, I try to make it uppercase. And anything that is custom that's not dependent on the syntax, I kind of try to make it lowercase. A lot of programmers, you will see this syntax, but this thing is exactly the same as saying create database. Okay, case insensitive. It doesn't matter. The casing doesn't matter in your SQL. Okay, you can do this as well. This will also work. Doesn't matter. Okay, but by convention, by kind of standard, what I try to do is I keep the keywords that are part of SQL, and you will see it shows up. It says key W. This means this is the keyword that belongs to MySQL or SQL. So basically, you cannot use these keywords in your code. For example, you cannot have a database called database. Oops, something like this. Okay, because it's going to go ahead and try to run that syntax. But that's how you create a database. Okay, make sure semicolon at the end. This designates that the line is complete, because we are going to use the same editor to write multiple queries, but we don't want to run all the queries. There will be certain queries that we want to run, and the semicolon over here kind of differentiates that. Okay, everybody good so far? Simple. Create database. Over here you will see two bolts, these two. These are used to execute the queries, the query that you wrote. So this line number 1 is called a query. So if you want to execute this, you have two options. The first option, if you're using the first one, you have to highlight the line that you're trying to execute and then press this button. Okay? You have to highlight it for the first one to work. Okay? So anything that you have highlighted, that's the only line it's going to run. Okay? The second option is, if you don't want to highlight, it says it's going to run anything that is under the cursor. Basically, it means if you want to run this line, you click over here, you see my cursor is over here, and you press, on Mac, it is Command Enter. Or you can go ahead and click this button. Okay, so what it is going to do is, it's going to find this line, whatever the cursor is on. It basically looks for a semicolon, and it kind of executes this line. Okay, so you have two options to run it. The first one, you have to highlight it and then run it. The second one, you can just put your cursor somewhere and then press Command Enter, and it's going to run the line where it stops at semicolon. Okay, just two ways. But these are the two buttons that are going to run your queries, the first and the second. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the first one. If I did a Command Enter, or you can click that first. If everything is good, you should see a green output with a message over here which says this query was successful, and it should show you like a green tick mark. Okay, so at this point I have created a database, but all your databases should be shown over here. Mine doesn't show. The only thing is, you need to refresh this button over here and it should show up like this. Okay, now if I run this query again, I should get an error because my database is already there. So I'm trying to create another database with the same name, and you will see some kind of error. So the only reason I wanted to show you is, every time you execute a query, at the bottom you're going to get the result. If you're getting a red thing, this means your query is incorrect, it's not running. A lot of people initially are like, oh, it's not working, it's not doing anything. Well, did you see the error? The error is at the bottom with a red mark, and try to see, it's going to give you an error, what's going on. Okay, try to see what the error is and then kind of try to fix it. Okay, this one on the top left, this thing, or you can right click and refresh all. Okay, is everybody good? Okay, so now we have a database. The next step is to create a table. All right, so on your left on this menu where it says animals DB, if you want to create a table, the first thing is you have to select the database you're trying to create a table. Right now I see two databases. One is called sys and one is called animals DB. Now sys is part of the system. They have their own thing. We don't have to worry about that. But when I'm creating a table, I need to select the database that I'm trying to create the table. Okay, the easiest option is double click this and it should kind of become bold. Do you see that? So versus sys, animals DB kind of bolded out. This means that this is a database that has been selected to run the next set of queries. Okay. If you don't do this and you try to run a query, is going to give you an error saying, oh, I don't know which database are you trying to add the table to. Okay. The second option to do that is using the syntax called use animals db and then write some query after that. So anything after this will automatically go to animals db and then kind of execute the next set of queries. And the next query is to create a table. Okay, so you have two options. Either once you have created the database, double click over here so that it becomes bold. This shows that this database has been selected. In that case, you don't have to use the syntax over here. But if you don't, and then you want to run the next set of queries, you can use animals db. You can use the keyword called use and then the name of the database. Okay. So I've already selected, I've double clicked it, so it's kind of bold. So any query that I execute afterwards is going to go to my animals DB database. All right. All right. So the next step is creating a table. Similar to this syntax is called create table. Okay. And then you're going to give it a table name. Okay. Now creating a table and columns kind of go hand in hand together. You have to, when you're trying to create a table, you need to add columns in the same query, and they both are going to be created together. A table will be created with a set of columns. Okay. Now columns and rows are same as, for example, Microsoft Excel. You have columns and rows. That's how the database is. So we are creating a bunch of columns. Okay. And then we are going to insert some data inside these columns. Okay. All right. So the syntax for creating a table is this, and then it ends with parentheses. Okay. Now the columns are going to go between these parentheses, just like a function in JavaScript. It's kind of similar thing. Okay. So you will see that it's giving me an error with this red cross, because the syntax is still not complete because I have not added the columns over here. So the tables and columns go hand in hand together. Okay. So I'm trying to create a table of people that have pets. That's the purpose of this database. So I'm going to have some columns. I think I have. So I'm going to have some columns like name, and then pet name, and a few more columns over here. Okay. So let's go ahead and see how do we create columns. So you will first give the name of the column. Let's call it name. Okay. The next part is your data type. Like, what is the data type for this column? Okay. So it's string, yes, but it's not called string in MySQL. It's called varchar. Now people call it varchar or varchar. Take your pick, depending on, I don't know, maybe it's the area where you're coming from. I call it varchar. Okay. So the varchar is kind of equivalent to a string data type in your JavaScript. Okay. So you're going to say this is going to be a string, so varchar, and then you will see these parentheses with varchar, and you have to specify a number. The number tells what's the length of my string. Okay, important. There's an option for unlimited one, but we're starting with the basic one for now. This is what varchar does. Okay, you're going to create a string column which length is going to be 30. Like, maximum length is going to be 30 characters. If you try to input something more than 30 characters in this column, it's going to be truncated. It's not going to give you an error. It's just going to truncate that. Okay. All right. And so that's how you create a column, a string column. Varchar. Let's go ahead and create a Boolean. So I'm going to create a Boolean column. I'm going to call it has pet. Okay, and the data type is Boolean, simple. Okay, this will have true and false or 1 and 0. We'll see what it inserts in the database, right? It's going to be true and false. All right, so string Boolean. Let's look at let's add one more string, pet name, varchar, give it 20 characters just to differentiate. Okay, and the last one we'll look at is the number one. Okay, it's called integer or int. Let's go back here, make sure it's called numeric types. They have a lot of different options. The one we are looking at is it's int or integer. Both of them will work. Okay, if you're using integer or int, this is the range of numbers, goes from this number to this number. Or if your column only has positive numbers, then this is the maximum you can store in that column. Okay, if you want even a higher one, you can use big int. All right, we'll stick to integer. Pet underscore age, int or integer, both of them will work, and that's it. Okay, now in your solutions or somewhere you're going to see some numbers with integer like this. It does not have any effect the way that we are creating tables. Okay, so if you see a number next to integer, you won't see any difference. Don't confuse this with this varchar over here. This thing, you will see it. If it is more than 30 characters, it's going to truncate. The 10 over here for integer means a different thing. At some point, we'll come back to it if you guys are curious, but for now, it does not make a difference. Okay. For more, you can read the documentation. They have a good explanation what that number means, but basically, it's not affecting anything in our database. All right. So you won't see any difference with any number that you put next to integer. Okay. So better way is just ignore it. Okay. But the number over here is important. Right, this is the length of the string, the maximum string length that can go in. All right, this should be good. I'm going to use the cursor method, so I'm going to place my cursor over here. Even though there are different lines, it's going to look for this semicolon and going to execute everything like this. Okay, so I'm going to put here, press Command Enter. If it is successful, you should see a message over here saying this thing. This means that the database has been created. Oh, the table has been created. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's make sure to refresh it. Open this tables, and you should see a table with these columns. All right, any questions so far? So for now, we have created our database, we have created a table, and we have created our columns. The last part is to create rows. All right, any questions? Did you do that in the database or the system? Oh, in the animals, don't touch the systems. Yeah, you're doing everything in the animals database. Okay. Are you guys following along, or I just want to make sure, were you guys able to create if you guys are following along? If not, that's okay. Okay. Yes. Next to what? To your, but there's no rows. Okay, so this means the syntax is wrong. Did you follow the exact same syntax? You have create table people. Maybe hover over it and see what the message is. So there's some error in the syntax. So you have your table name, and then these are the column names separated by commas. Okay, the last one doesn't have because that's the end. Okay, we'll do an activity later on, but this is the syntax. Okay, so I have my database, but it doesn't have any rows. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and now create some rows in our database. All right. So creating rows in the database in SQL terms means inserting rows into the database. Okay. So the syntax starts with insert. Okay. If you want to create a row, you're going to basically say, I'm going to insert a row in my database. The syntax is insert, okay, into, and then the name of the table. The table name is called people, so you're trying to insert a row in the table people, and then parentheses. We'll come back and fill this parentheses, okay, just like a function, and then values, and again parentheses. So we'll come back and fill those two things. But this is the basic syntax. Insert into table name, parentheses, values, parentheses. Okay. In the first parentheses, you're going to mention the name of the columns for this table. Okay, so you're trying to insert into this table, and the columns for this table are name has pet, pet name, pet age. Oops, trying to press enter. Okay. All right, the first parenthesis has the name. After the values, this parenthesis is going to have the values that you're trying to insert into this table, which correspond to this column, this column, this column, and this column. Okay, respectively. So if you mess up the sequence, it's going to insert the wrong. Okay, so in values, the first value is going to correspond to name, the second is going to correspond to this, third, and fourth. Okay, so let's go ahead and say okay, so name of the person, because that's what I'm saying, has pet. Let's say true. True is a keyword. Okay. Let's give it some pet name. Okay, and then a number. Okay. Again, how does it know which column to insert which value? Again, these are one-to-one relationship. Okay, if you mess up the sequence over here, it's going to insert the wrong value in the wrong column. So insert into table name, column names, values, and the value for each column. Okay, so if you go ahead and press enter, let's see if this works. Okay, looks good because it says green check mark. This means something was inserted. So now I have a row. Okay, so I started with creating a database. I have a table, I have a column, and finally I was able to insert a single row. Okay, you can enter as many rows as you want. So let's go ahead and insert just one more. Six, 5. Okay, so now it says successful. So now I have 2 rows in my table. All right. All right. Any questions? Everybody good? Well, we're coming to that. I'm saying whatever have I covered. Any questions on this? I'm going to like rephrase my questions. Any questions on anything that I've covered? How's that? Okay. So now I have my data in my table. How do I read that data? How do I see that data? Okay. So the query for that is select star from and the table name. Okay. This is a query that allows you to read the rows from this table. The star over here says give me every single row that is in this table. Okay, there are different ways. You don't have to use the star, but the star is the most basic functionality, and what it means is get me every single row, every single column that belongs to this table. Okay, Write this query, press enter. You should get a pop-up which like this, and it is going to show you all the rows in your table. So these are my columns, right? Columns, and these are my rows. Go ahead and remove this. Okay, so this is the query that is used to read rows from the database. Read rows from DB. This is how you put a comment in your MySQL. It's a double dashes. Okay, so we have seen how do we insert or how do we create rows. We have seen how do we read the data back. Okay, there are two more operations that we need to see. The second two operations are update and delete. And I'm talking with respect to rows. When it comes to rows, or basically you have data, create rows, read rows, update, and delete. So this is all related to rows. Okay. So what we have seen the creation of rows, which is inserting. This is this query over here. The next part we saw how do we read those rows from our table. Okay, and the next part we'll see how do we update the existing rows, right? I had two rows. Let's suppose I want to go ahead and update them to something different. Okay. All right. Any questions so far before I move on to the next two? Getting it? Okay. So how do I update? The query is update table name. Okay. Set. Okay. Set consists of the column, the value that you're trying to update. Okay, so this is going to have column name and the value that you're trying to update. For example, I'm trying to update, let's say, name of this pet. Okay, so I'm trying to update pet name, and I'm trying to update pet name to this. Okay, oops. Right, this is not a complete query. I still have to complete this. But basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go to this row, and over here I'm trying to update this pet name. Okay, so I'm trying to update the pet name, but I have two rows. Now how do I tell which row am I trying to update? Right, how do I tell SQL not to update this one, but I want to update this one? Okay, so I need to find something unique over here. For example, the name, right? So you're going to enter where name, which is my other column, is equal to Tony. Okay. Now, technical terms, where this is called a clause, C-L-A-U-S-E, clause. So I'm saying that a where clause. Okay. So how does this read? Update the table. Okay. Within this table, there's a column called pet name. Update the pet name to Toby. Okay, now which pet name? Am I trying to update this one or this one? That's where the where clause comes in. Where name, this column, is equal to Tony. Okay, so it's just going to go ahead from all my rows, it's going to go ahead to this particular row and update the pet name. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Successful. Let's go back here and read our rows. And then the pet name has been updated. Okay. Now I can update multiple columns in the same query. I can say update the pet name to Toby. Maybe I had a typo. And then also update the age to Okay, so you can just do a comma separated. So this is going to go ahead, find a row with the name Tony, and it's going to update the pet name to this and pet age to this. So two things are being updated in the same query. So if I do enter, successful, go back to this query, select it, command enter, and then the age has been updated, and then the name has also been updated. Oops. Okay. All right. Any questions on the update? Yes. Oh. This thing mattered, yes. This thing because it's going to give you a name. Heard somebody saying an update error. So to fix that, that's my apologies. I forgot to mention that. Go into your preferences, and in your SQL editor tab at the bottom you will see save, updates, rejects, updates, and deletes. So for you guys it's probably checked. That's why you might be getting an error. Just uncheck it. That's okay. Alright, so you go to MySQL Workbench, preferences, the first SQL editor, okay, and at the bottom there should be this line. Make sure it is unchecked, otherwise you won't be able to update or delete. What is it? So go into your MySQL Workbench, on the top menu, preferences, select SQL editor, okay, and at the bottom there's a statement over here which says save, updates, rejects, updates, and deletes with no restriction. Uncheck that. If it is checked, you won't be able to run this query, update or delete. MySQL Workbench on the top, preferences. What is it? You might have to just restart, like close the MySQL Workbench and just restart it. Might be that. Let me see. You might have to close it out and then open it again. What is it? Okay, so yeah, you will have to reconnect it. Okay. Any other questions on the queries that I have covered? All right. So let's look at the last one. Well, last two. Delete. Now I want to delete something. The query is going to be, now I'm deleting, all of these are related to the rows, okay, to the data that I have. I've created a row, I'm reading a row using the select query, I'm updating a row, and I'm going to delete a row, okay. It's not deleting the table or it's not deleting the database. We'll take a look at it in a minute. Right now I'm deleting a row. So right now let's go back and refresh. I have these two rows and I'm going to delete the first one, okay. um, Command is delete, kind of similar to update, or kind of combination. To delete from table name, where clause, where name column is equal to 20. Okay, this is how the syntax for delete is. All right. If you use anything else other than this syntax, it's not going to work. It's very particular. So update, table name, set, what are you trying to update, and then where, which row are you trying to update. Delete from table name, where, and then a unique identifier. Okay. So if I do enter, at the bottom it says successful. If I go back to my select query, now I should have only one row. Okay. I can go back on the top and then run this insert query. Again, I can click over here, press command enter, it's going to insert that row. Okay, successful. If I go back here, should have two rows now. Yes, and I go back here. Yes, that's what I was saying. So when you're viewing it, the true is inserted as 1 and a false is inserted as a 0. Yes.
How do you open the table once it's closed?
You mean this table?
Yeah.
The select query?
Yeah.
It should pop up when I run this query. It should pop up. Are you running this query? Once you run the select query, it should bring it up. Okay. Yes.
You show the delete one.
The delete one. Yes. Okay. So now this is deleting a row from the table. Now, if you want to delete the whole table, delete table, and then the table name. There's no going back from this. So, oh, I have a error in my query over here. So let's see what that is. I know what the error is. Oh, very sure. Okay, I'll come back to this one in a minute. That's the wrong syntax. Okay. Oops. Oh, that's good. All right. So, any questions so far? I'll come back to the table one in a minute. Delete from. If you're trying to delete from a table, trying to delete a row from a table, this is the query. Okay. Any questions? So we saw create, we saw read, we saw update, and we saw delete. Yes.
So I added
Inserted.
the deleted one and then I deleted. So I deleted both of them. How would I hold it with one? Which one to delete?
Right. So that's what I was saying. So let me go back again and so let me go back here again. Insert. So for now, with our limited knowledge, you need to find a unique identifier. If your name is both Tony and Tony, and you say delete, where Tony is going to delete both. Yes. Right now, at this point, we'll come back and fix it. For now, we have no way to. We need to find a unique identifier. For now, I had unique identifier, which is the name. So that's why I'm going to delete just one. If both of them are Tony, yes, it's going to delete both rows.
Just find something else.
Find something else, or we'll look at a way in a better way. For now, just make a different name. For now, and then we'll see how to uniquely identify after we are through these basic activities. Okay, good question though. Okay, now if I want to delete the table, it's called drop. It's not actually called delete. It's called drop animals underscore db. Okay. So delete is used for deleting rows or your data from the table. If you want to delete the whole table, we call it drop. The same is with the database. All right. So the command is drop table. This is going to go ahead and delete the whole table. Oh, no, that's not my table name. What's my table name? People. Sorry, that's my database name. Okay, drop table people. Either you can do this or you can just right click and say drop table. I usually do this, but this is the query. So if I run this, it is successful, and you see my table menu, it's empty. There's nothing over here. Okay. And then I'm going to finish off this activity by deleting my database. Oops. Any question before I delete my database? It's going, no? Sure. Animals underscore db. Okay. And enter. Everything is gone, so there's no query anymore. Okay. So that's how you would drop the database. You can go back. I already wrote the query, so it's easy. I can just click over here, press Command Enter, and it's going to create my database. No big deal. And I have my database back. Just double click it so that it's selected. Now I can go ahead and create my tables again. Enter, and my table's back. Go back here again, press enter. I have my rows over here. Select, and there's my row back. Okay. Under like 10 seconds, I was able to create my database again. All right. Questions? No questions? So either I'm really good at explaining, or
You would have to go run for it.
yes. Hold on.
Is there any way to execute like without having to do both of those?
You can select it, and so what you can do is,
Like highlight everything.
yeah, you'll have to highlight everything. So if I want to insert these two rows, I would highlight this and then press the first button. And then it's going to execute everything that has been highlighted.
Would there be like so say that you have just like this massive
Mm-hmm.
like MySQL database?
Yeah.
Is there a way to like select that and then instead of like having to say that you got like 10,000 lines of code?
Okay.
Is there a way to like select that specific thing and run all instances of it?
Run all instances.
Like the insert into all that stuff.
So for now I have 30 lines of code, right? Kind of similar. So I want to only run this one
Yeah.
in your code or right over here.
So like in your just like putting in the say that you have it all written up.
Okay.
Would you have to highlight every single instance of that in 10,000
So if you have 10,000 like insert statements, if you are running it in the editor over here, yes, you will have to highlight it and then save. There are different ways. What you can do is, this is a little bit advanced. You can take all of these queries out and put it in a different SQL file, and then run and do that. Yes, there's a way. When we get to the coding part, we'll see. For now, in this editor, there's no way. You have to select it and save, right? But there are, yes, better ways to do it. You have to save it in a SQL file and then run that whole file. Okay, any other questions? No questions? Okay, let's do the activity number 2. Okay, this is called favorite database. Kind of similar thing. You're going to create a database. Chris, did you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to see the bottom part of it.
Drop table and then drop database. Okay. This activity should be, if you guys understood this, it should be pretty straightforward. You're going to create a similar database with few columns. Let's see. What do you have here? Okay, so you're going to create a database first. Then you're going to create, looks like 3 tables. Okay, the first table is going to have a column called food, which is going to be 50 character long and cannot be null. Oops, interesting. Take a look at it, see if you can find how to do this. And then you will create a column called score, which is integer. The second table is going to have a column called song, varchar 100, cannot be null. Take a look at this again, see if you can figure out how do we make it not null. Oh, I already said the answer. Okay, the second column is going to be artist, 50 character long. Score is an integer, straightforward. And then third table is similar called numeric column called ID, which automatically increments and cannot be null. Okay, take a look at this if you can figure out, and we'll kind of this kind of steps into our next part, and I'll show you guys how to do it. Again, this is the last table is kind of bonus. If you get to these two, this is good enough, because the last one actually talks about a few things that we'll cover in a bit. But it's good. See from the documentation if you can figure out the last column. going to bring my syntax back over here so that you guys can see. Select, update, delete, insert. I'm gonna keep it over here. I did this like a year ago. Let me try to find out how I did it. It's in preferences, appearance, maybe. Mm, let's just do this. Dark mode in my SQL workbench. Um, oh, it is only for Macs. Is that what it is? I think it's only for Mac. I'm trying to remember something. I think like Mac OS setting when they included the dark mode, I did dark mode in my Mac, and it kind of updated everything as dark mode. Yeah, it might be just the Mac dark mode. It's not the sequel.
Yeah, it looks like they're
Yeah, it's the Mac dark mode that's kind of affecting it. There's no setting inside it. How's everyone doing? Were you guys able to create the first table? You guys figure out the not no? Okay. So technically, again, the technical buzzwords, I'll drop some words more over here. Those are called constraints. So for example, the not null, what I want to say that this column can never be null. If somebody tries to insert or give me an empty value, the database should give me an error. Okay. So these things, you're trying to put a constraint on your table, and the constraint is that my name column can never have a null value, basically an empty value. Okay, so from the technical point of view, these are called constraints. There are a lot more different constraints. One of them is saying that my column is not null. Okay, and the statement is not null. So now if you try to insert a name and maybe, well, over here to test it out, you will have to say null. Okay, if you try to insert this thing, you're going to get an error. Okay, how are we putting this? Once we look at the code, when you get back to Node.js, you will see if you try to pass in an empty thing, it's going to give you an error. For now, to test it out, you can put the keyword null and try to insert it. It's going to give you an error. Okay, so this was the part of the exercise. How do you put this constraint that some of my columns cannot have null values? Okay, what about the auto increment one? You guys figure, already give you the answer. It's called auto increment. You guys figure out the automatically increment one? What did he say? Did he say, of course? All right, so how do we, let me go back and drop my table. Oh, I don't have a table. So let's suppose I'm going to add a column called ID, and then it's going to be an integer. Auto increment only works on numbers. And then if you say auto increment, and let's put a second constraint saying not null. Okay, so what does auto increment do? You don't have to insert the value for the column that has auto increment. Kind of defeats the purpose. Basically what it is saying is every time there's a row that is created, which is inserted in my database, for this column, add a number, increment the number. Whatever the last number was, go ahead and increment it. Okay, so if I try to insert, let's go ahead and create this table first. Oh, error. What is error? Incorrect. Oh, do I have two? Where's the second one? Okay, it must be defined as a key. Okay, so I was hoping that this would work, then I can show you and then move on to the next part, but it doesn't look like, if I have an auto increment, I need to put in something else. Were you guys able to get it working with just this syntax or not? You had to add something else. Irina, did you add something else? Yes. Okay. All right, so before I move on to show you how to make this work, any questions on the auto increment one? Right, it will increment a number, whatever the last number. So let's suppose your ID is 5. The next one when you try to insert is going to put as a 6, then 7, then 8, then 9. Okay, now let's suppose you have 5 rows. All of them have IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you delete the first one, and then you try to run again, it's going to insert as 6, right? It doesn't refresh, it doesn't look for the keys that have been deleted, okay? It always increments it. All right, so to make this work, this is also called a constraint, and this is called primary key, and then this is a syntax. All right, so every single table that you create needs to have a primary key. What does a primary key means? It means that there should be a key, there should be an identifier that you can identify your row without a doubt is always going to be unique. Okay? In this case, this ID is going to be always, always, always unique. How? Because I'm giving the power to my MySQL. I'm saying, hey, every time a row is inserted, go ahead, auto increment it, and then insert this row. So every single time, this ID is going to be unique. So if I have an ID for number 2, in my data, there won't be any other ID with the same thing. Okay? If you try to manually insert it, you're going to give an error saying the ID already exists. Okay? And what is the reason for that? The reason for this is so that we can identify each single row uniquely. For now, I have 2 different names and I'm able to uniquely identify because my name is different. But if I put this, will this work? It'll work, right? It's going to go ahead and insert my these 2 rows, but when I go and try to delete, what's going to happen is going to delete both of them. Okay, the reason is there is no way to uniquely identify these 2 rows. Okay, so when we are creating a table, almost always you need a primary key. I'm not sure what will be the instance where you don't need a primary key. Your tables are always going to have a key that is going to be unique, okay, which will uniquely identify each record. Yes. I just call it ID. You can call it anything you want. You can. Some people call it people underscore ID. That's also valid. Or call it ID. It's up to you. Let's call it people underscore ID so that we can uniquely identify. Okay. Now, when you're trying to, the last part is you need to identify. You need to tell from these columns which one is a primary key. Primary key means it's going to be always unique, and this is how you would be able to identify a single record in your table, right? So you will say primary key, parentheses, and then mention the column. You can only have one primary key in your column, okay, for now. So pick a key that you all know is always going to be unique. From these, the only key that I can see is always going to be unique is the first one, right? The name is not unique. Two people can have the same name, so it's not really unique. Okay. Um, Primary key, this is also called a constraint. Again, why a constraint? Because you're trying to enforce some constraint on your table that this is going to be my primary key. This is going to be unique. Nobody else cannot reuse the same key again and again. Okay. So let's go ahead and create this table and then try to insert some rows. Okay. Now if I come back over here, you will see I'm not updating my insert statement. Oops. Same one, it will work. Again, why? Because my first column is auto increment. Okay, so you can ignore the ID column, the people ID column. Why? Because MySQL will take care of it. It looks at this auto increment and it knows this is going to be a number. So MySQL is going to go ahead, look at the last one that was inserted and then auto increment it and put a unique key over there. Okay, so any ID that you have auto incremented, don't put it inside your insert statement. Okay, because that's the property, that's the constraint that you have put on your table and MySQL is going to take care of it. Okay, so if I go ahead and insert this, all right, looks like inserted. Let's go back to my select, make sure. All right, all my columns, and then I have a column called people underscore ID and it has a unique ID. Okay, so if I go ahead and insert the second row, same name, go back to my select, unique ID. Now if I want to delete or if I want to update, I'm going to use my keys to make an update. For example, this is not going to work. Again, why? Well, it will work, but what's going to happen is going to update both rows with this name. So if I run this, success, but what happened is it went ahead and updated both rows. Again, why? Because my query was saying, hey, update the pet name where name is equal to Tony. So both have Tony. So to kind of fix this, we're going to use something that is unique. This time it's people underscore ID. This is a number, so I'm trying to update my second. Let's call it enter, success. Let's go back here, and then this was updated. Okay, my second row was updated because it looks for this ID. Okay, same thing with the delete. Now if you're trying to delete, if you run this one, it's going to delete both rows, but now we have a fix for that. So we're going to say people underscore ID is equal to 2, enter. Let's go back to my read, and the second was added. Remove. Okay, again, the syntax is when you're trying to create a table, create an ID. Generally, you will see people making the table name and then underscore ID. Okay, it's good convention, kind of simplifies it when you have more than one tables. We're going to see how to join, how to get data from more than one tables. Kind of easy to identify where this ID is coming from. So it's good practice to put the table name underscore and ID. Okay, integer, it has to be integer. Auto increment, not null. Kind of enforce it, but by default, primary key are not null anyway because you cannot insert without inserting any number inside your row. Okay. The last part is you have to have this. The syntax is primary key parentheses and the column name that you are trying to designate as a primary key. Okay. Always remember primary keys is always unique. You cannot have two primary keys, two numbers with the same primary key. So if you try to manually insert a primary key of 1, you will get an error because my table already has 1. Okay, and the next thing is if you try to insert a row now, it should give you a key of 3. Let's go ahead and insert this. Select 3. Why? Because there 2 was already there, but I deleted it. But MySQL kind of captures it, and you will never get the primary key 2 for this table. Okay. Sometimes it kind of bothers me when I'm showing. So what I do is I delete the whole table and kind of start inserting rows again so that I can have a nice sequence. That's my OCD. Okay. But you will never get 2 back again. Okay. Unless you go back and drop the table and start again. All right. Any questions on this? Go back here. Everybody understand not null? Okay. I think in your case there was one more constraint. I think it was called default. So for example, if you want to put a default value, just like in JavaScript, you can say default false. So even if you skip this column when you're trying to insert, for example, if you do an insert statement, come on. Okay, and then I remove has pet column. Okay, so what's going to happen? I have a default over there, so it's going to still add a value, but it's going to put a false over there. Let's see, name, success. Let's go back to my select query. Okay, so inserted. Oh yeah. Okay, so I have to. Since I changed my table, I need to drop it and recreate it. Drop table. Let me quickly do this. Since my syntax changed, I need to recreate it. Okay. And where was this one? Select. And there it is. So 0 basically means false. Even though I'm skipping this value over here, I'm not giving this column or the value. It works because I have a default keyword over here. Okay. Now, if you make any changes to your column schema, right? If you remove this, or you have to kind of drop your table and redo it, or there is a alter table statement. It's a little bit more syntax, but for now, the easier way is you can drop your table and recreate it. Okay. All right. Any questions in last 2 minutes? Yes.
So Python, it always has to have a number,
Yes.
right?
For now, yes. I think if you skip it, it will give you a.
Yeah.
Zoom. Yeah, it gives you a unlimited or infinite or something. I'm not sure what the limit is. But yes, usually we put a number so that we are trying to restrict. Um, it depends on what your application is. Usually you will see a number because this data is eventually going to come from somewhere. And what that somewhere is from your website. You will have an input box. You're going to type some name, right? So you don't want a name like infinite name over there. So that's why we put some restrictions. So that's why it's good to have some kind of a restriction, right? Eventually, this is all coming from some UI. Okay, nobody is going to come to your database and insert these rows. Somebody is going to insert on your website, and then you're going to come over here and save it. Okay, good. Any other questions? All right, let's take a break. We'll come back at 12:45, and then we'll look at some more complex queries. Do an exercise. What? This is not done yet.